Well, hello. Welcome back. This is Philip Steiger at thebest3d.com, and we're going to have a couple of tutorials, sort of a mini series focused on what's new in PD Howler, PD Howler 2023. That's now also available on Steam. You may have followed this. Maybe this is completely new. Maybe you haven't seen them before. It's known as PD, as in Project Dog Waffle, and there are several incarnations of it. There's a very light version. PD Particles 9 was the last we built, mostly focused on particle brushes. Yes, there's a couple of filters, but no fancy animation, no fancy 3D. Um, Painting is what the focus is on that one, with particle brushes especially. I mean, there's other brushes too. And then, of course, Artist. The Artist edition is lighter, cheaper, but doesn't do animation and lacks some of the filters which are there for using them in animated mode, but you can also, of course, use them in still image, or you can render a filter across a sequence of frames and then just decide which one's the best. So Artist is great. The best of the best is PD Howler. And there are lots of different things. You see particle brushes, so glowing brushes and other things. Some of them react to sound. You have music that can influence your artwork. Um, and of course, some of that reacts to your skills. So I'm not going to show a lot of that on my side, but there is this new version, PD Howler. I'm going to start that right here. And yes, I have configured it to run in administrator mode because I run many different versions at the same time. And sometimes when I reinstall one, it wants to take away the ownership of or association of certain libraries and resources. And in order to not run into that problem, I simply set it to run as administrator. That's simply done as a property on the Windows interface when you go to the file dogwaffle.exe. Where you've installed the program. And so now with this in mind, I have a layout here that I like, but it's quite customizable. So you might see here under the view menu, something like options for the layout to be a little bit different. Sidebar on the left. Right now, this sidebar here on the right, you can minimize it, you can hide it or bring it forward, but you can also have it on the left, and I think that's how it is by default. So if you look layout to the left, sidebar to the left, there it is. This one here is a toolbar. This one is a sidebar. So the toolbar has all the tools. And if you're on a small screen, on a low resolution screen, you may want to have it in two columns so that it still fits and you don't crop the bottom of it away. So layout has a 2-option mode toolbar. For this one here can be in 2 columns. What I usually have is the let's see where we go here, something like this, single column, and then I have the toolbar on the right side. I don't know why, I just like it that way, so I'm gonna go back to that. You can also float the toolbar if you don't want to keep it stuck on the left side of the screen. Maybe move it around, see if it can go to a second screen. So there's a couple of other things to explore here. Interface style, lots of different styles for or themes, if you will, for the interface itself. You know, light text on dark background, or other types of like charcoal, system colors blue, whatever. So there's there's a couple to choose from to make it yours. Show sidebar, that's the hiding of it, right? If you don't, then you don't, and you're hiding it. So I'm gonna go bring it back. And scratchy voice here. I'm gonna need to get some coffee here. So let me show sidebar on the right. Of course, it's still hidden, so I need to make sure it's coming back. Show sidebar. There it is. So now I have it on the right, and again you have this little gizmo here to hide it or bring it forward. And there's something else you'll see on the right side here too, and that is if you store an image. So that's the concept of, let's say you have something here that you draw, and you said, that's a cool thing, I want to keep that for something else later. I just need to kind of do like a notepad, put it aside, right? And I mean, you could copy it here to the clipboard. you know, there's room for one image, copy to the clipboard. So you could go to another image program like Airfront View and paste it with Control V. But that only gives you the RGB, whereas there may be some alpha channel here too, right? If you, for example, if you use the selection tools, you can see there's options to work with selections, and there's tools down here in the toolbar for even the magic wand to select. For example, inside the eye here, it's closed, so you should only select the inside of the eye. And here too, if I use shift click, then I have them both selected. Right, so that's something that you may want to store too. So when you go here, there's this little couple of tools, shortcuts here in the upper right. This one here, the first one on the left side, is store image. When you do that, that's when you'll see a stored copy here. Now it shows only the RGB in this preview, but it actually saves the alpha channel too. Right, and one way to check that is that if you go here to clear in the lower left on the toolbar, clear, that only clears the RGB. So you could go also to clear, deselect, clear the alpha. And now if you look here at the options, you can paste the image back in, but you can also work at just the alpha, the stored alpha. Right, the alpha that was stored along with that image, you can also work it here, and you can blur it, and you can do other things here on the selection tools, is like Gaussian blur, box filter selection. Even look at it as a grayscale, and you know, do a lot of other stuff with that. So we'll get into that. Anyway, so there's a red, green, blue channel for the colors you see, and then there is an alpha channel as well on this main image. Now we're going to talk a little bit about layers, but not a whole lot. So we're not going to do that right now either. There are layers, but they're not the type that you may be expecting or familiar with on the Photoshop side, or on many other programs. You have a red, green, blue alpha, meaning an alpha channel for each layer. Here we differently, and some things you can't do the way you might be used to do, but you can quite often get to the same result in different ways. And we do have brushes. There's a lot of focus on brushes. So there's a brush tool here. When you right click that brush tool, you'll see a whole list of different presets, and many of them have quite a number of categories or subcategories. There's organic effects here, has tons of them. Okay, we have a lot of focus on doing things like foliage and you know, brushes that paint nature scenes and that sort of things. There's also a media browser for that. So you click on that. You can also pin it down, and you can let's say here, make it a little bit bigger. You see a large number of brushes included. And of course, there's many ways to make your own brushes. There's a whole brush category, brush menu here, where you can copy an image and then make it a brush, or you can load it from a PNG file, for example, RGB plus alpha. You have an alpha channel in the brush. So you can have some transparency or cut holes and other things, stencils, that sort of things. And there's also tools to key and to adjust that transparency level. So lots of things, even animator brushes. So there's tools for animator brushes, meaning you can create a sequence of images that will be loaded into the brush, and then you paint with it. A very simple way to identify, to see that, to understand that, is, let's say you draw something with a fairly simple brush, let's say a small airbrush. Medium airbrush. What's that? That's pretty big, but let's go with that. Actually, let's use the size. See the size control here? I can make it a little bit thinner. So you have a 1, you have a 2, and you have a 3. Or you could do Roman 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3-ish. All right, so an animator brush is one where you will simply pick the rectangle that you want. Let's say maybe this one. Right, and then copy that into the brush. Copy the selected to brush. Okay, so now that's in your brush, and you can see it as a preview if you click this little eye here. Right, well, kind of, maybe we need to set the size full so we see it. There it is. Also opacity, we can have it very translucent, barely visible, or full opaque. There you go. But so now you can paint with that. And why is it not painting? Well, because we have the RGB and the alpha, and it's opaque. You can see there's a little white box that contains it. It picked that up too in the rectangle. I didn't pick just the black pixels. So what I can do at this point though is I can key on the brush. If you look at the tool here, this little gizmo here below the magic wand, there is a brush keying or brush selection tool. Click that, And that's actually to select an area. You could do that the same way as I did with the alpha selection first. But then this time it's not showing the opaque background, right? So the difference is that here, it's actually, if you right click it, you can see, you could key to a different, specific color can be identified as transparent, right? And you can adjust how soft, you can identify how soft it is here. So you can add a little bit of blurriness to that transition from the white to black or very crisp. So that gets you into working with brushes in a little bit more sophisticated way. But I'm going to go back to the initial approach, which is maybe with the oval or with the rectangle tool, select something like this, right, and make that a brush that I'm going to store. So I'm going to copy this as a brush and then store it. So we just have a visual, sort of an idea of what that brush looks like in this little rectangle. Now it's a square shape here in the preview, but the shape of the brush itself might be a different aspect ratio. Here we just squeeze it into a square for a small quick preview. Now we can do the same thing with the next one. So go back to that rectangle tool, and there it is, and store that one as well. So do a brush, copy selected as brush, and there's probably I bet there's shortcuts to some of these, right? If these are tools that you use a lot, there's probably a shortcut somewhere for it. You can learn about shortcuts here under the help keyboard shortcut reference, right? So that may be useful reading as well. So anyway, we have this one here. I'm going to store that one, store and manage. There we go. So now we have two of those. And by the way, if they take too much screen real estate, too much space, you can minimize them. So you now have those two little ones. And one way, of course, that you use them is you click this one, you paint with that one. If you click this one, you paint with that one, right? And let's do one more, which is the number 3. So let's go one more time. Maybe this time we'll use the oval selector. And I think it's something like this. Yep. All right, and here we go with the last copy as selected. And so now here we have it in an, oh, you know what, let me erase to black, right click the erase here to black. So now you can see I have this in an oval selector, and I'm going to store this brush. Let's see, what's that? Store and manage. There it is. All right, so these were rectangular, so obviously they fit snug against the border of their selection. But the other one, the oval one here, there are some transparencies, some transparent pixels around, so that only the oval becomes opaque here. All right, so we have that, and we could paint with that. Click, 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 or you can drag it. And of course, there's other things we can do with that. One of them is to build it into an animated brush. Right, so what I'll do with that is I'll select the first brush, and I'll go to here, create animated brush, and I say how many frames. Let's say I want just those 3 frames. I'm going to go with 3. Maybe I'll do 4, and I'll have one that I can delete at the end. Give it a little bit margin in case you change your mind. So I have an animated brush, and I'm going to, so the animated brush is there, but there's also this current brush. And what I want to do is store the animated brush. So where do we have that? The current loaded one, brush store. Store. So this one here, if I go to the film strip, you can see now it has an animated brush with 4 images. That one image I had got stored there 4 times. And I can select this one frame and go to the next frame and select, actually I don't know that I can select directly which frame here, but I can go to one and the next and add to that. So I can add a frame. So let's say I'm actually a little bit ahead here. I'm going to delete one frame. The last one is the one that gets deleted. So you see that there's one more I want to delete. And then maybe one more. I don't know if it allows down to just one. Okay, yep, there it is. So now I go to number 2, select number 2 and add it here. Now we have 2 frames, and that one was bigger, not in the preview, but in its actual selection. It wasn't the same size, so it keeps them intact. And so now I go to number 3 and add a frame. So that's a very tedious manual way to do animated brushes. Not the only way. This is just one way to kind of become a bit familiar with the mechanics of it. But now as you're painting, you see it's going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so it's cycling through them as I'm painting. And you can make it cycle slower if you make the step size distance a little bit bigger. Right, so now it's actually your mouse now has to move a little bit farther before it stamps it down. If you set the step even bigger than that, and maybe the size a little bit smaller, you get this sequence of numbers showing out as you're painting. So lots of different ways to use that. Let's go and hide the film strip. It's still in there, of course. There's a couple of other things you can quickly manage: the size of it, the orientation or rotation, random color selections, and that sort of thing. Or not random color selections, but just change the hue. So for example, if you reduce the red to much less of that, then each of the frames will be given a blue and greenish, so a cyan tint. But there's more. We'll learn more about colors and how they can affect the brushes as well. Let's go minimize that. And I think that will be good enough for a first start. Now I just want to finish with a little bit of a wow effect. And that wow effect will involve something. So I'm painting a couple of dip dabs here. Maybe that's it. That's all I need on the colors. I'm going to now invert it. Let's go. Actually, first I'd store the image. Click this here to store the image. You can also do that from the image menu, of course. Store image copy. And now I'm going to invert it. Invert the image. All right, let's store that. Now I'm going to blur it a little bit. There's actually under the filter menu, there's tons of options for blurring. I'm going to use the photographic filter. There is a soft contrast and then the light diffusion. So the light diffusion will diffuse the bright pixels into its neighboring pixels. And you can make it more or less, and you can have it very intense. Let's see which one. I think the add mode. Oh, that's bright. That's intense. Maybe screen mode. I know there's some, you see just tiny little bit the white into the red, and you can probably change the gain here and adjust that a little bit. Okay, so just to add a little bit of a stirring or a softening of the transition into colors. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to now use that. Here, let me go hide the brush. I'm gonna use that as a elevation map. And so the way to do that is you turn it into the transform 3D designer. You can also straight render that, in fact, but let's first take it into the 3D designer to see what we do with it as an elevation map. Right? So here are these numbers. You can adjust the amplitude of that. Let's say you want to pre-filter it a little bit or not at all. A couple of things you can do here to change, the angle at which you're looking at it. There's also erosion. Let's erode it. Let's go to more. There's a more button here, and you have some erosion you can add to that, and maybe more rainfall. Let's give it 44. Let's give it a flat threshold at 5. So now you have more of those, and then perhaps sediment deposits, and of course some coloring as well. So let's create a texture and give it some snow caps, or what do we want? Rock and grass. Something here, let's say some snow. There. All right, so let's go and change perhaps a little bit on the coloring, but this is not going to be our final render. What we'll do is we'll export the elevation map. There, the height map, store this height map. So you see it stored here as a grayscale image. That's the height map with the erosion, with the sediments, with the transforms with it on the geometry. You can also store the texture. That's the coloring that we see. And depth information we could store. And that's basically going to show you, what's closer and what's farther away. Sometimes that's useful if you do rendering, that you want to have it like a filter that's based on that distance, like more blurring in the background, so the background is kind of blurred but less in the foreground. You can also do alpha, map the alpha channel to Z, so now you have, it's pretty much the same thing. You don't see it here until you're out there, but you also have a OBJ option. I will stay away from that right now. It creates very large files. The OBJ file is not optimized yet. it's creating a series of triangles. It's not a triangle strip or a quad mesh, even though it probably could and should. So it could be much smaller file, but we wanted to make it compatible with just about any OBJ parser. And not all OBJ parsers have the ability to recognize and work with triangle strips um, or quad meshes. So for now, it's just individual triangles, which makes it unfortunately a very large file. So stay. All right, where were we? Let's go into the other one. So this one is the colored one. Let's go to the elevation map. This one here. Yep, that one's the color without erosion. We have the color with erosion right here. And what we'll do is we'll take the elevation map. These are the colored ones. A bit further up there, I think. This one. And we will add some more erosion. No, that's the one without erosion. Oh, it's good. We'll add a little bit more erosion, so we'll subtract it. Where is it? Where's my erosion map? This one. Combine by subtraction. And, well, let's just leave it like that. We don't need to be perfectionist here as we just explore. One thing we do want, let's switch to the swap buffer. This one here jumps back and forth between one image buffer and the other. The other one is called the swap buffer or swap image. So the front is the main buffer. You can see here in the title bar it says main. And if you switch to the swap buffer, you are on the swap. And that's where we want the other one with the, no, not this one, the one with the erosion there. All right, so we have color with erosion, we have elevation map with extra erosion, and so at this point it's ready to be extracted, rendered, that is. And so this time we will render that with not the 3D designer. That one's more aiming at making the 3D design. Here's a puppy ray, and that one is GPU based, so you need a good GPU to render with that. There is a preview quality. Let's go to at least something like medium or high quality for a few extra passes of anti-aliasing. You can turn the anti-aliasing off here. You can change the scale of the terrain in the vertical direction. Right, something like this. You can change the sky. There's a couple of different skies. There's even one which. So where did we have that with the elevation map? I think I didn't store the last one. Let's just go with the prior one. We've wasted enough time, right? Oh, maybe we can do this one more here. Yeah, these are the masks. Must be this one here for the erosion. Combine it, subtract it, and there you go. So let's store that one too. And now we can create the animation. And this time we'll do 200, let's do 345. Why not just out of the wrist? Let's not be picky about how many frames we actually have. Copy current frame, that's the option. Not clear secondary to secondary color, which is white, but instead copy the current frame. So each frame is going to be loaded with a copy of that current frame we have here. That's what we want, so that the animation is going to be across the same image, serving as a elevation map, right? So what I'll do is I'll position it here, then I'll go to, that's by the way, that positioning is if Control Shift keys down and then left button lets you move. You can also just use this tool here, there's a hand here, this one, right? That allows you to click and drag. And then you go to Transform, Puppy Ray, and so now, if we do a quick render of what we currently have, I didn't use the X to clear. If I use X, it resets all the parameters. But if you click Done, as you leave, it remembers them and it doesn't reset it. So you can come back to the same scene, and that's really the idea here. We already got some good parameters chosen. What I need to do is a little bit more. I'm going to go with out anti-aliasing as I'm looking at this, and I'm going to position myself perhaps initially like this, and change the angle, something like that, and then put a keyframe there, right? And then I'm going to choose a different position along the timeline. That's where we have a keyframe. I'm going to go about here, or like this, and only lower the camera a little bit. Right, something like this. Now I'm gonna go here and come a little bit closer and also turn the camera. So for this I can turn it this way, and with the right button I can also ease it in like I'm flying a helicopter or something like that. And there you go. Next keyframe, I'm gonna go even more like this and this, and of course we're dipping a little bit, dangerously close to the water. Let's go like that. And then here we're going to try to ricochet back. So here we need to like rotate with the right button. And of course, don't forget to keep moving. Right, and here we're going to almost crash into that wall. Keyframe that, and then here we go. Sort of the counter reaction, and we almost crash into that wall. We just go past it like this. Okay, there. So as you scrub through that, maybe you go into the fast preview mode, maybe medium preview quality or something like that. So you can check in the preview, but also if you rest long enough, you can see in the preview, in the full view, where the camera, what scene it's going to show you there. Now in this case, the elevation map is static, but we'll see later that you can actually have the elevation map be animated to an animated elevation map, and then render it. There's an option for that somewhere here. There, animate each frame. We won't use that, but one more thing we will use is better quality on the rendering. So we're going to set it to a final render, and then even better than that, wait for that render to be completed, then undo the anti-aliasing, because as you're further experimenting, you may want to have not wait too long in case it triggers an automatic refresh. Let's do 100, let's do 99 Luftballons, 99 air balloons, 99 AA steps, anti-aliasing. There's other ways to make the quality better too, get rid of some of the granularity. One of them is to add the quality here, the GI samples, make it 3 or 4. Or even higher. That basically gets it more averaging colors from samples in the neighborhood of the pixels as it's calculating it. Shadow, maybe we'll do some soft shadows a little bit too. We have the riverbed, we have pretty much all the options we care for right now. One more thing is the keyframes moving. So the keyframes we have here, they are going forward and then sideways, and you can navigate through them. You can look here at the keyframes. That's where we add a keyframe or subtract, delete existing keyframe. But there's a move button here too. You can go from one keyframe to the next, and you see how on the scrub bar it shows where you are now on the timeline. So if I click this again, it goes to the next keyframe. And it might be kind of a sudden change in angle, and if you want to smooth this out, you use this option here, keyframe smoothing. Right, so right here, let's go all the way to 20 or so. That will allow you to not see too much of a robotic type mechanical sudden change in angle or direction. It's a little bit smoother that way. And we'll want to, I think we keyframed everything. Everything we care for right now. So let's go render. Now I'm going to do this one. Normally I would render it at 99 or 200 or 150 frames. I mean AA steps, anti-aliasing steps, but this is not a final render for me right now. It's really just more of a test. So I'm going to go to about 12 or 15, something like that. And do the anti-aliased rendering. Let's do it once. And it's pretty fast, about a second. One Mississippi, boom, yeah. So, and you see, every time I render, the water moves, right? So it's going to be animated water, and that's why it's nice not to move too fast and not to fly across this landscape too fast initially. You want to see and take in the beauty of that picture. So I'm going to now render the animation, and that's right here. Animate, global luminance level, go. And maybe I'll move this over here first. And then I can move the progression bar here as well. So now it's rendering each frame. Camera is moving. We didn't move the sun. We could do that. We could change quite a number of other parameters. Not absolutely everything. Not everything is keyframed here, but there are some things you can change in appearance during the animation. And so now you can already tell we're moving down. The camera is gradually easing closer to the water. It's not moving forward yet, but it's not going to suddenly start doing that. It's because we have the smoothing enabled here. It's going to then start easing into the next. It's probably doing a spline path or something like that. And so you see now it's already starting to turn and to start moving forward, not just downward. All right, so let's wait for this animation to be done and then we'll return. All right, and here we are, rendering complete. You can preview it here. I wouldn't necessarily, well, I wouldn't scrub it because that's going to force a re-render as you scrub, but you can play it. And certainly you can also click done, so it still remembers all the parameters in case you need to go back to it. And you can take off, follow up with the same parameter settings initially. But now here we have the animation that we want to see. Yeah, we fly close to the rock, but didn't quite crash into it. There's a little bit of motion blur you can see here. Right, if you look at the details on that rock, they get a little bit distorted here. That's the motion blur that we also do automatically. So if you fly really fast or close to something, you will see some tearing or some motion blur. And there it is. Now let's play it. And thanks for watching. That'll be our first tutorial. We'll do a few more.